Hello, world. My name is Nostalgia Tash, and you are listening to Nostalgia Tash Watches Disney Plus Films. Today's trilogy contains not only my favorite classic animated Disney film, but my favorite Disney princess as well. I'm talking about Aladdin and, of course, Princess Jasmine. Now, Princess Jasmine has been my favorite Disney princess ever since I was little. I have a Princess Jasmine Barbie doll. I've been Princess Jasmine for Halloween. And when I was a kid and went to Disney World, I got Princess Jasmine's autograph twice in my autograph book. I feel like I was a little bit aware that they were two completely different Princess Jasmines, but that almost made it even more special because I had two distinct Princess Jasmine signatures instead of just one. So, in talking about Aladdin today, we will be going over the classic 1992 version Aladdin, the 1994 Aladdin Return of Jafar, and 1996's Aladdin King of Thieves. When I revisited these films, I totally forgot how amazing the original Aladdin is. It's my favorite movie for a reason. I think I kind of forgot about it, but this rewatch was amazing. So some of the things that I will be going over today will be some notes when I was watching the film, stuff I noticed that maybe I hadn't noticed before. And then we'll go over some IMDb facts, some things that I thought were really interesting about each film, and then just kind of unpick a little bit more behind the scenes stuff, maybe talk about a bit of controversy. So yeah, let's see what we get to. In the original Aladdin, one of the things that I noticed right off the bat was there's this scene right before Princess Jasmine and Aladdin meet for the first time when Abu distracts the watermelon shop owner so that Aladdin's able to steal watermelon so they can sit and eat it together. But they just chill on the top of the stall while they're eating. And I don't know how big the stalls are, but it seems like the shop owner probably could have noticed that there was like a hump of two bodies like just chilling on top of his stall. So I thought that was a little bit unrealistic that Abu like distracted him and then he just like didn't think to look up to see if there was anything else going on. So I thought that was kind of an unrealistic but still very cute scene. Another thing that I really enjoyed, just like comedic moments with Abu specifically. One of the things that I have noticed is that Aladdin very much seems to steal because it's a survival mechanism. Obviously, he's a street rat. He lives on the street. He needs to survive by stealing food. Whereas I think Abu just straight up loves the thrill of the steal. I think he has, crow eyes every time he sees something really shiny. He gets really distracted and like can't help it. And he always gets super bummed out when they end up giving money, food, riches away to people that are less fortunate than them. That happens sort of throughout the three Disney movies. So yeah, I think that Abu maybe steals more for the thrill of it than the actual survival method that I think Aladdin does. Another thing that was really cute was when Aladdin was imprisoned in the castle, how Abu has this whole like lockpicking scene. And I love how he gets his little like lockpicking kit out and he like shuffles around in there and he sets Aladdin free. But of course, Aladdin's so distracted about feeling like an idiot because Jasmine's a princess and he's all distracted. But like Abu is so excited and he wants to be praised. Like, look at me, I just rescued your ass. And then like Aladdin totally brushes him off. But I recognize your lockpicking talents, Abu. Another thing couple things that I noticed is that in the Aladdin sort of universe, the franchise, I feel like a lot of emphasis is rightfully so placed on the genie and Robbie Williams for being the most iconic voice acting character, probably the most recognizable genie voice, all that kind of stuff. But I'd like to shine a little bit of a light on Gilbert Gottfried as Iago. That's a pretty iconic role for him as well. And I think it's really cool to see over the course of the three movies how he gets a little bit more airtime, a little bit more screen time to really show off that narcissistic, pessimistic, grumpy, but just hilariously awesome character. So wanted to give some Iago love as well. Another thing that I noticed in this rewatch was a little bit of a revelation. That's the word. A revelation about myself and how I would play with my Barbie dolls and my toys when I was little. So, there's that pinnacle moment where Jafar hypnotizes the Sultan into convincing him to let Jafar marry Jasmine. Jasmine's this cute, fearless, I don't know, spunky. That's the word. Spunky is what I'm looking for. And Jafar is this grumpy, creepy old man. So I remembered I used to play with my dolls in a very similar way where I would always have this spunky, attitude-driven female that I would always say there would always be this ugly bad guy who she was being forced to marry and she had to escape or defy him or whatever. I can't remember if I actually had a prince saving her or anything like that. But yeah, I sort of realized that while rewatching Aladdin, that clearly it informed my childhood much more than maybe I realized, because the whole archetype of creepy old man forcing cool young girl to marry him was an overarching theme in many of my make-believe imagination playing times. Now, something else that I noticed or perhaps wondered when rewatching Aladdin this time around is when when Jafar banishes Aladdin to the end of the earth. Now, what I want to know is where the end of the earth is according to this film, because obviously when he gets there, it's like snowy. So the end of the earth is clearly like a snowed out area. So I don't know if it's in relation to the Middle East, and then the end of the earth could be up or down. So that could be either poles, like the North or the South Pole, or like somewhere up in Russia or something like that. But I just thought it was really odd that the end of the earth is snowy. If you have an idea as where you think Jafar sent Aladdin to the end of the earth, quote unquote, let me know, because I just thought it was interesting. And then of course the fact that Carpet rescues him and they just fly on back, lickety split, no big deal. So I don't know if the end of the earth is very far, though I guess in A Whole New World they literally travel all over the world in the course of a song. So maybe I'm just thinking a bit too hard about it and I need to suspend my disbelief slightly. So that was one of my larger questions during this rewatch. I watched the whole film, so from beginning to end, including the credits, and a nice little nostalgia throwback there was at the very end once they show all of the songs that were played in the movie. It says that the soundtrack is available on cassette and compact disc. And that just really made me happy because obviously at the time, cassettes were a huge thing. They were starting to introduce the CDs. So cassette and compact disc. And that just, I got a little bit nostalgic for that. Those were sort of the bits that I noticed about myself and about the actual Aladdin movie. Some of the things that I wanted to point out were some of the things that IMDb has said about the original Aladdin film. So these are some of the main facts that I thought were really cool. So one of the things that I haven't noticed is that whenever Aladdin tells a lie in the series, the big feather in his turban falls over his face, which is something that obviously I recognized that it kept falling over the course of the film, but I never put two and two together that it was every time he lied that this happened. Another cool fact is during the course of recording all of the voices that Robin Williams did as the genie, they almost had 16 hours worth of material. So they had to cut down all of Robin's comedic genius into the movie. So they have a whole bunch of leftover bits and pieces because there was just so much that Robbie Williams brought to the table. Apparently, this Aladdin is the 14th and first animated movie ever to gross more than $200 million in the box office, which sounds pretty baller to me. The other thing that was really cool about Aladdin, and you also see it in this film as well as in The King of Thieves, is how many different celebrity impersonations that genie does. And that sort of reminds me kind of, when I was a kid, obviously watching the film, I didn't necessarily know who the celebrity impersonations were. I just thought, the genie was being funny. And I definitely think that Disney does a really good job of putting adult references into the film so that parents who are obviously taking their kids to the theater have those little bits of inside jokes between them and the movie. Because I definitely, during the rewatch I did recently, recognized a lot more of those impersonations. But there were even some that I didn't recognize. But I also know that at the time the movie came out, 92, those references obviously weren't for me. They were for the parents that were taking the kids to see the film at the time. So I think that that's really cool. Another random fact is that Aladdin throws apples, like an apple, to Jasmine several times throughout the film. Apparently, so one of the places that they fly over during A Whole New World is Greece. And allegedly, in ancient Greece, throwing an apple to a woman was considered a marriage proposal. I didn't fact check this, obviously. This is just lifted straight from IMDb, so maybe it's wrong, but I thought that was a cool little fact to throw in there. Another cool fact pulled straight from IMDb is that Andreas Deja, who was the supervising animator for Jafar, he based Jafar's main design on Mark Davis's design for Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty. Mark Davis was another animator within the Disney world. So there's actually a lot of parallels between Jafar and Maleficent, not just based on their looks. But in addition to that, they both carry a staff, which they use to execute their evil magic. They also both have bird henchmen. So obviously Iago the parrot is the henchman to Jafar, and then Maleficent has a raven who acts as her bird henchman. And then they both turn themselves into gigantic reptiles in the sort of ending climactic battle in both movies. Obviously, Jafar turns into a snake and Maleficent turns into a dragon. So those are some really cool parallels between Jafar and Maleficent. My final piece of specifically IMDb selected trivia gives a bit of a shout out to my girl, Princess Jasmine. She is apparently the only Disney princess to kiss a villain. So, in that penultimate scene where Jafar is trying to grant all of his wishes and wishes for Jasmine to fall madly in love with him, obviously Genie knows he can't do that, but Jafar doesn't, and Jasmine, being quick-witted and feisty like she is, decides to pretend that the spell has been cast over her and sort of seduces Jafar to try to distract him while Aladdin is trying to get the lamp. And so, there's that big moment where she kisses him, and she is the only Disney princess that has done that. Obviously, this kissing scene between Jafar and Jasmine was a little bit controversial. We'll go over some more of the controversy surrounding Aladdin at the end of the podcast, where we go through sort of the controversies as a whole. But yeah, I thought that last bit of trivia, repping my girl Jasmine, she is the one and only Disney princess to kiss a villain. I don't know if that's something she should be proud of or not, but we're proud of her. And now we'll take a quick break before we dive into the second movie within our Aladdin trilogy, which is Aladdin and the Return of Jafar. And we're back and ready to dive into round 2 of our trilogy in the Aladdin series, which is Aladdin and the Return of Jafar, which is honestly basically Iago's emancipation movie. In this one, you see Jafar is actually, he's still alive, Genie yeeted him in his lamp at the end of the first movie, and you suspect, him and Iago are out in the middle of the desert, but I guess Iago has spent who knows how long digging him and Jafar out of the desert. Then in a turn of events, Jafar is being Jafar. Iago says, screw you, I'm going to go off on my own and do my own thing. So he is pretty much the star main kind of protagonist of this particular movie. You obviously still have, Aladdin, all of them, it still revolves around them, but I do feel like this is a very Iago-centric film, which I think is great because, Gilbert Gottfried needs some recognition, and I kind of like that he got, some more songs, some more movies, some more focus, and I think that maybe also was a bit of a distraction or a bit of a strategic point because Robin Williams obviously is not in this movie as the genie. It is Dan Castellaneta. He's the voice actor who is most well known for playing Homer Simpson. That is his sort of main claim to fame. So he has come into the movie as the genie for this time around. So what you do notice kind of straight off the bat with Dan Castellaneta's version of the genie, you do kind of get Homer voice vibes. I feel like the sort of line between some of the genie mannerisms / voice nuances and the Homer one, it's a very fine line. I also noticed something very different about Dan and Robin's genies in the fact that Robin Williams does a lot of impersonations. So he does a lot of character impersonators. Obviously, they have a lot of appearances in the first Aladdin. And Dan does a lot of voices with the genie, especially during his song where he's like went all around the world and saw all these people, but he needed to come back because being with friends is better. He does a lot of characters, but they're not impressions. So I think that Dan is an incredible voice actor, but he voices different kind of characters, whereas Robbie Williams does impressions of people who already exist. Another cool point that I noticed, I like the fact that the villain, he's not really the villain, he's kind of the next chump in Jafar's reign, is named Abysmal. So like an abysmal person. So I thought that was just very clever. I think it's really funny how crap of a genie Jafar is, because you see obviously the stark difference of when Abysmal rescues Jafar from the lamp or rubs Jafar free of the lamp versus how Genie does it with Aladdin. Jafar is very manipulative, and obviously that hasn't changed even in his genie form. In the first movie, he very much uses the Sultan as his sort of bumbling idiot to manipulate with his scepter, and then he does the same thing with Abysmal in this movie. So very much you can see parallels between his treatment of the Sultan and treatment of Abysmal, and Jafar is clearly still a manipulative jerk. The other thing that I did notice quite starkly was that Jasmine's singing voice changed. It just sounded a little bit different. So I did some Googling, some researching, and Leah Salonga is the voice of Jasmine in the first Aladdin film. She's also the singing voice for Mulan. So I don't know if maybe because the singing voice was now being moved to somebody else, she kind of couldn't sing as two princesses. I don't know what the logistics of that were. But anyway, the voice in this film and the third film, Aladdin and the King of Thieves, is Liz Callaway, who, fun fact, is also the singing voice for our non-Disney princess Anastasia, which is another film that I love, but obviously, she's not included in this rewatch. So that definitely was something that I noticed, and turns out, yes, it had changed. The other thing is there's a Aladdin quick change moment at the end of their song Forget About Love, where he's in his Aladdin Prince Ali robes, and then at the end of the song he's back in his sort of street rat attire. Apparently that is because the animation studio switched. It was Disney Australia and then it moved to Disney Japan. Obviously that's a continuity error, but that's a good way to sort of indicate the switch between two of the animation studios. I didn't obviously know that that was the case until I read up on it, but yeah, there's a quick change for Aladdin at the end of the song. Some things that I thought were really cute, just something that actually made me laugh out loud because this movie is sort of the weaker of the three, was when Aladdin takes the Sultan off to go on their little magic carpet ride adventure. At one point, Genie and Abu come running in, and Genie's like, "Oh, the picnic boys are here, don't forget about us." And I just thought the fact that he referred to him and Abu as the picnic boys, they were this little gang, and the way they come rustling out in their, picnicky attire with their basket and things like that was actually really cute. Something that I thought was a little bit of a strange choice for this film was that now Jafar seems to have a lot of spider elements to his vibe. When he captures Genie, there's a spider clamped around the ball. There's a bunch of spiders that show up, a cluster of them before Jafar reveals himself to still be alive. And I don't really know why Jafar suddenly became Spider Boy, where he, in the first movie, turned into a giant snake. Snakes were sort of his vibe. So I guess, hanging out in a lamp for a little bit, his vibe changed. I don't know. I thought that was a weird choice. The other thing that I wanted to point out, which in sort of a funny, poetic way a little bit, there's that moment where Jasmine, not really Jasmine, orders for the execution of Aladdin, and Razul is the one who's bringing him out there. So Razul is the main guard of the palace, who's had a long history of chasing after Aladdin and being thwarted by Aladdin. In a way, I thought Razul's actually secretly real excited that he gets to end Aladdin. Obviously, he doesn't actually, but I was just kind of yeah, I think he wouldn't have been too upset if all of this had actually gone according to plan. And again, watch the whole movie from beginning to end. So nice little tidbit at the end of this one that said the producers wish to thank the artists and animators of the original motion picture for their guidance, inspiration, and support. So I thought that was really sweet. I like how the credits have those thank you bits, those things like that. So again, something really nice for the current producers, animators company to thank the original artists to sort of give them that inspiration and guidance. So now, onto our IMDb facts. Something that made sense now within the context is that this movie was originally planned as a television special, and then Disney decided to make it the direct-to-video sequel. Apparently, this was Disney's very first direct-to-video sequel, which is interesting because I feel like this sort of set the tone for a plethora of direct-to-DVD sequels. That was sort of like Disney's magic formula. Release the big movie and then do all the direct-to-DVD sequels or direct-to-video sequels. So Aladdin, Return of Jafar was the first. A possible component to the vision of this theatrical to then direct-to-DVD formula is the fact that apparently animated theatrical films take between 3 to 5 years to work on, compared to direct-to-video films, which take less than 2 years. So I'm sure from a cost marketing standpoint, Disney thought that that was probably better strategy for them, and clearly it's worked out so far. And you can sort of tell that it was kind of meant to be a television special in a way, like the production quality and the value and the storyline obviously isn't as grand and as amazing as the first one. This film serves as the pilot episode to the Aladdin 1994 TV series. The main character, bad guy, Abismal, actually appears in the first episode of the Aladdin TV series. So it kind of acts as a transition into that world, which then sort of contextualizes a lot of the film itself. My brother and I actually had a VHS of a couple of the Aladdin TV show episodes. So you could get, Disney would release VHSs and there would be like, I don't know, I think 2 or 3 of the episodes per film. So we had one of those, and I never quite understood because in the TV series, Iago's a good guy. And they never sort of explain from, seeing the first Aladdin to then watching the TV series. I don't know how Iago becomes good, because in my brain, I'm like, well, he's still on the lamp with Jafar. So this provided that context to me because I had never seen this sequel up until this point. So I'm like, okay, now I get why they sort of needed to be like, okay, here's the Iago emancipation movie. Now you know why he's good in the Aladdin series. So that made a lot of sense. And the last bit of IMDb trivia that again ties back into the Aladdin TV series is that apparently there are clips from this film that were actually used in the opening intro to the Aladdin television series. So again, I think that the film and the TV series are much closer linked than the first Aladdin film and the third Aladdin film. Speaking of the third Aladdin film, we are going to take another short break and then we will come back to do Aladdin and the King of Thieves. And we're back and ready to dive into Aladdin and the King of Thieves. So much like Aladdin and the Return of Jafar, I actually had not seen this movie prior to watching for this podcast. But I did see a lot of adverts for this film, obviously at the time, maybe getting other Disney movies and stuff like that. Like I remember the sort of VHS coming soon to home video. And then they would play clips or the ads for this film. So the bit, at the beginning, the first song is, I'm finally getting married. So I remember they had sliced it together in this way to be like, Jasmine says, I'm finally getting married. And then Aladdin goes, I'm finally getting married. And then Genie's like, they're finally getting married. There's a party in Agrabah. And then they would like say, Aladdin and the King of Thieves. I definitely like had nostalgic in hearing that song because I'm like, oh, now I know where the advert comes from. Another one is when they do the Welcome to the 40 Thieves songs. That was another song that was in the advert. Especially when, I don't know exactly, it goes, na 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 na. Welcome to the 40 Thieves. That was another bit that they clipped to then use in the adverts for this film. So again, don't have nostalgia for the actual film itself, but I have nostalgia for the adverts about the film. And in addition to that, some of the other things I noticed, there's actually a bit of a throwback to the first Aladdin film. So in the first one, when Aladdin and Abu are running away from Rasul and his guards, at one point, Abu takes out a sword. And then they go, the monkey has a sword, and they freak out. And then Rasul's like, we all have swords. And then Abu is like, oh my goodness, drops the sword and like runs off. In this one, Abu then has a sword and he's fighting up against the 40 thieves. And they kind of look at him and they sort of do that unconscious, like, oh, look, the monkey has a sword, but we have swords. But Abu is smarter this time, and he uses the sword to cut the chandelier thing on the ceiling so that it falls on the 40 thieves. Not all the 40 thieves, but you know what I mean. I thought that was a cute little throwback. Abu is a little bit older, wiser. He now knows how to wield a sword and subdue bad guys a bit more effectively. Another cute moment that I found, again, little comedic relief, was when Iago's butt gets stuck in the wall when they go to do the 40 Thieves lair. It's a cute moment, made me LOL. A thing that I thought was very interesting and maybe worth pointing out is during the big scene where Aladdin gets discovered by the 40 thieves. They want to kill him, but instead they take part in this big task. The king of the thieves is like, well, my son's gonna succeed. And he kills Saluk in order to be indoctrinated into the 40 thieves. And I don't think Aladdin's ever killed anyone before. And they sort of like gloss over that. Like, I feel like that's probably a pretty big deal for him to have to go through, especially if he's never done it before. But of course, we find out that Saluk's not really dead. He becomes the main villain in this series. But yeah, they just kind of were like, yeah, cool, you killed somebody. And then he crowd surfs over the 40 thieves before their big song happens. But yeah, it just seemed like a very glossed over take on the fact that like Aladdin probably just did something extremely traumatic and maybe wants to work that trauma out. He doesn't have time for that in this film. When Aladdin's off gallivanting with his father in the 40 Thievesdom, Princess Jasmine's all like grumpy and sad. She's worried about him, of course. And I thought it was really cute that there's so many odes to other Disney films in this movie. So when Genie's trying to cheer up Princess Jasmine, he does this whole bit where he's helping to plan her wedding and replan it and is like, oh, maybe you want this carriage, and chucks out a Cinderella reference and chucks out an Ariel reference, things like that. And I just thought that that was really cute. And again, Iago, he has a bit more of a part in this than he did in the first movie. Obviously, the second movie was kind of all about him. There's still a bit more screen time with him in this one. And, you know, he can't resist the pull of the Hand of Midas. The King of Thieves, Aladdin's dad, Cassim, has been looking for this Hand of Midas forever. And that's why he wants to steal the scepter and all this kind of stuff. He's really selling it. I think Abu gets a bit in on it too, but he has a bit more of a conscience at this point, where Iago only just turned good a movie ago, so he still has some kinks to work out. So yeah, I was a little bit upset with Iago because he was all like, yeah, cool, like I'm gonna help you steal this thing. And then he gets both him and Cassim in trouble. Poo on Iago. That wasn't very smart. But then Iago and Cassim are in trouble and they get thrown in jail. And they're like, oh, you know, Sultan, is there anything you can do? Because, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, nope, can't change the rules is the rules. And I'm just like, Sultan, dude, you changed the rules so that Aladdin could marry Jasmine. Like at the end of the film, he's like, oh, I'm the Sultan, I do what I want. And he just forgot that he was the Sultan and has these powers. He's like, oh no, can't release Cassim and Iago. They need to rot in jail. Just, well, whooped it up. Can't do nothing about that. Yeah, sure there. Cool. Another thing, a throwback, I guess, to the original film. Not only, you know, with the Abu bit, there was a bit of a throwback where it looked like when Cassim's in the dungeon, they sort of do a pan down where they look at the rafters with the rats and stuff and pan down to Cassim. And it seemed very similar to when Aladdin is captured. They pan down into the prison scene before he meets the shapeshifty Jafar for the first time. I thought that was very cool. Another thing that I thought was hokey or whatever, Aladdin gets all mad because he's like, my life was great and then my dad showed up, screw him, blah, blah, blah. And then he, you know, banishes him, but of course he's in trouble. So then they're like, but Aladdin, like, he's your dad, you need to save him, blah, blah, blah. I get in the context of this film, yes, you know, Cassim actually was like a good guy, kind of, a little bit of a shady guy, but whatever. So Aladdin goes and saves him. This is amazing. He realized the error of his ways. But I would just like to preface that if you have a family member in your life who is a thief, who is shitty, who makes your life difficult and, you know, is manipulative and rude and all that kind of stuff, you are not obligated to have them in your life just because they're your family and you need to love them. Nah, you don't have to do that. I'm telling you, if you have shitty family members in your life, you have my permission to cut them out. You don't need to listen to the moral of Aladdin and the King of Thieves. Okay, now that rant is done, let's go on to Turtle Island, which I thought was really cool. The reference to Turtle Island. I know of Turtle Island in the context of like an indigenous term for the lands that are now known as North and Central America. Growing up in Canada, the city that I was in, we obviously occupied indigenous land. So I was sort of kind of on the sidelines privy to different Aboriginal or indigenous teachings. So one of the ones that they talk about is Turtle Island, or the creation of North America or North and Central America, the land that we were occupying. So that was really cool. I like that there was a Turtle Island reference. I'm not sure sort of where they got their reference or got their understanding of Turtle Island, but for me, the idea of Turtle Island is grounded in the indigenous teachings that I sort of was on the fringes of hearing about within the town I grew up in. Something that I thought was a bit of a continuity issue was when Saluk has Kasim and there's a big battle, whatever, and then Aladdin's like, it took me years to find my father. And you're like, well, technically no, because you didn't know he was alive, so you weren't actually looking for him. But I get, the sentiments like, I just found my dad, you can't take him away from me. But when you actually get to the nitty-gritty of what he's saying, not actually true. Another note that I had, on which I thought, once Kasim gets the hand of Midas, he turns everything to gold and oh my god, it's amazing. And one of the things that's turned to gold is the water. And so I wanted to know, because at one point Aladdin swims across the liquid gold to start climbing up the inside of this turtle. And so I Googled if liquid gold would function the same as water does. And it does not. Apparently it would be way too hot and way too dense to swim in. So Aladdin would either be burnt alive or wouldn't actually be able to swim because the liquid gold is too dense. But suspension of disbelief, it's just, golden hued water that still works as water. But apparently you cannot swim in liquid gold. Good to know. Again, I mentioned the classic Disney references when Genie is cheering up Princess Jasmine, but there's also other moments where they reference Steamboat Willie, they reference Peter Pan, they reference The Lion King, they reference Pocahontas. That was cute. I enjoy seeing those references in other movies. I know that Pixar does that a lot, so it was cool to see that in an Aladdin film. I thought that, in a way, the three movies kind of represent Iago in sort of a Goldilocks and the Three Bears conundrum, because at the end of the film, he ends up traveling off with Kasim. So my sort of analysis of this is that first film, he was with Jafar. Jafar was too evil. He goes and hangs out with Aladdin in the second film. He's like, Aladdin's too good. This mushy lovey-dovey stuff with Jasmine, it makes him sick. He's not a fan of it. And I feel like Kasim is just right. That just right amount of he's a good guy, but he's, a little bit evil, a little bit self-serving, kind of very much the person version of Iago. So I thought that was really cute. I feel like Iago's been searching for the right master, if you will, or the right co-pilot. And I feel like he went through 3 different ones, and the third one was the right fit for him. Another little cute bit that I noticed at the end of the credits, film usually gets put into a projector. It gets wound in that kind of traditional sense. When the credits are rolling, Genie looks like he's stuck rolling up in the credits. So I can only assume that he's stuck either on the film itself or he's stuck in the actual wheel. And so as the wheel is turning, it's bringing him up into focus. And I just thought that was a really cute touch. Again, credit scene, they do that thing where they say this film would not have been possible without the inspiration from the original motion pictures and the work of its talented artists and animators. Again, Disney shouting out other Disney, which I think is really cool. And now we will go on to the IMDb bit. There's not very many for this one. It seems like the big movie has all of the trivia, and then as you go through the kind of direct-to-DVD sequels, the trilogies, there's less and less fun facts, but we still got them. The scene that I had mentioned that I really loved when Genie is consoling Jasmine while Aladdin is away with his dad was completely improvised by Robin Williams, which I thought is really cool, really clever of him. Another fact which I thought made a lot of sense was that Sir Sean Connery was originally cast as Kasim, but due to scheduling conflicts, he was then replaced with John Rhys-Davies. And I definitely feel like Kasim has some Sean Connery vibes, but I also think that John Rhys-Davies, who also is most known for playing Gimli in the Lord of the Rings series, I think he did a really good job as Kasim. But I don't know if he was Kasim as Sean Connery or if this is also his vibe as well, but the fact totally made sense to me. There is also apparently 2 comic adaptations of this movie that was released in 96, which I guess that's another way for Disney to start branching out in different platforms. Obviously, they have the Aladdin TV series, they have Aladdin books, just trying to cover all the bases. And the final fact, which I thought was interesting, and I tried to fact check it, but I don't quite know how they got this number. Apparently, this film grossed $186 million, which makes it the 4th highest grossing direct-to-video animated feature of all time. So there's a lot of different components to that. It's highest grossing, the direct-to-video, but it's the animated direct-to-video, and they've determined with all of that information that it's the 4th. And so I tried to do some digging to see how they got this number, and I didn't have the patience to like go in and look at all the animated film gross box office lists and figure out which ones are sequels and all that kind of stuff. But apparently it's the 4th highest grossing. If you want to crunch those numbers and do the math and confirm or deny that for me, that would be cool. Now we're just going to take one more little quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to dive into some of the controversy surrounding the franchise, the characters, and stuff like that. So we'll see you soon. And we're back. So the first bit of controversy I'd like to dive into is some genie drama. I'm talking about the fact that Robin Williams appears in the first Aladdin and the third Aladdin, but he does not appear in the second one. Genie is voiced by Dan Castellaneta, and I wanted to know why. Luckily, IMDb provided that answer for me, and according to them, Robbie Williams obviously provided the voice of the genie. It was at a union scale rate, which is the lowest legal rate a studio can give an actor, on the provisos that his voice was not used for merchandising, so toys, things like that, and that the genie character cannot take up more than 25% of the space on the poster, ad, billboard, trailer. So basically he was like, I want to do this to submit a legacy for my kids. I wanted to do that animation thing, but I do not want to be used to market toys. I don't want to be used basically as a talking head for the franchise, the characters. I just want to be a voice actor in this film. But that was not what Disney did. These wishes were not granted. So when that occurred, Robin Williams withdrew his support for Disney and the film in an attempt to get back on good terms with Robin Williams. I think this is like the biggest rich dude flex. Walt Disney CEO Michael Eisner apologized to him with a peace offering of an original Pablo Picasso painting. Isn't that just the most like, oh, we're sorry that, we broke contract, but here as a token of my apology is this super expensive original painting, basically money on the back of us marketing your voice and when you didn't want us to. So kind of rightfully so, Williams was like, nah, I don't accept your gift. So it wasn't until Disney chairman Jeffrey Katzenberg, who obviously was the one who probably decided to do the marketing things, the stuff that essentially reneged on Williams' contract. So once that chairman, Jeffrey Katzenberg, was fired and replaced by Joe Ross, Williams returned to Disney. Through Joe Roth, they issued a public apology to Robin Williams, and they promised to right the wrongs of the initial contract breaking, and those promises were kept. So Williams was really happy and felt rectified by all the wrongdoing that Disney had done, so he decided to return for the voice of the genie in the Aladdin, the King of Thieves. So that's all of that. There's plenty of YouTube videos and articles going into more detail about the ins and outs of what really angered Robbie Williams, what Disney had done, how they have repaired that relationship. So if you're kind of more interested in that, definitely go check those out. But I thought that the big genie drama was worth addressing. The second big controversy worth addressing, kind of the big elephant in the room, is the racial depictions of a lot of the characters in Aladdin. Actually, now when you click on to watch it on Disney Plus, there's sort of like this advert or this recognition piece that pops up before you watch the film, where Disney recognizes that they depicted negative stereotypes of cultures and races in this film, and they recognize that it was wrong for them to do it then, and it's still wrong, but they don't want to censor their original content. They want to use this as like a teachable moment to show how Disney is committed to creating stories that are more representative of the populations, especially the ones that they have negatively portrayed in the past. So I think that was really cool that they are recognizing and showing that commitment. But I thought we would go in a little bit deeper and sort of get into the specifics about these racial insensitivities that have occurred in this film. The first bit I would like to talk about is apparently the original lyrics in the opening song Arabian Nights were altered after the movie's theatrical release because Arab American groups claimed that some of the lines in the song were racist. Specifically, the line says, "Oh, I come from a land from a faraway place where the caravan camels roam, where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home." So obviously the bit about cutting off the ear was deemed offensive. The film was already released, but Disney agreed to change it on the video release and any subsequent theatrical releases. So the new line is, "I come from a land from a faraway place where the caravan camels roam, where it's flat and immense and the heat is intense. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home." And these are the lines that are included in the film version on Disney+. So obviously, Disney has kept up its deal of the bargain, where those are the lyrics that are now in the opening segment, Arabian Nights. So that was the first main controversy. The second one is the fact that there's sort of a hierarchy, a racial hierarchy within Aladdin. They essentially whitewash the main characters of the film. So all of the good guys, the protagonists of the film, are very white-centric, whereas the more evil characters, the bad characters, they are depicted or drawn with darker complexions, so that there's a distinct bias between good being white and evil being dark. Another thing that I noticed in my research is who they decided to model the main characters off of. Princess Jasmine's appearance was based off of Jennifer Connelly, who is an actress most known at that time for her appearance in the movie Labyrinth, as well as animator Mark Henn, who was a supervising animator for Jasmine based on his sister. Mark Henn is a white guy. I assume he has a white sister, and Jennifer Connelly is a white actress. So obviously, if you're basing the animation of a princess or of a character based on white people as your image, you're obviously going to end up with a white character, which is really stupid when you think about the fact that these characters, this movie takes place in the Middle East. Same goes for Aladdin, where his initial visual development, he mostly resembled Michael J. Fox. And then Jeffrey Katzenberg didn't think that a Michael J. Fox character was very appealing to women. So he asked that there was a bit of Tom Cruise thrown into the mix. Again, two white guys used as the visual inspiration for the main character of Aladdin, who is a Middle Eastern character. So that was a bit negligent, obviously, on the part of the animators, because if you're creating characters of a specific race, you obviously should be looking for visual inspiration from people that are of the same race as your main characters. So I think that played a big part in why Aladdin and Jasmine are white, because they're essentially visually inspired by white people. Now, personally, I think Aladdin is a smoke show, but obviously Disney done did messed up. Now, the final bit of controversy is some 90s conspiracy theory controversy. And this has occurred in a few different instances, in a few different animated movies. But in this one, I'm talking specifically about the innuendo sexual secrets that people claim that Disney hid in their films. In Aladdin, the original 92 version, there's a line that says, "Good tiger, take off and go." When Aladdin, posing as Prince Ali, goes to Jasmine's balcony and is trying to woo her before they take off in Part of Your World. And Raja obviously comes at him because she's like, "Stay away from my girl." So I guess to shoo Raja away, he originally goes, "Good tiger, take off and go." But the film, once it was released on home video, people began to speculate that the line actually said, "Good teenagers, take off their clothes." So that's the subliminal messaging. That's the conspiracy. So in the 2004 Platinum Edition release of the movie, they actually censored the line because of the controversy. And then it has since been added back to the 2015 Diamond Edition. The version I watched on Disney Plus, they seem to have dubbed over the lines with the variation of Aladdin saying like, "Oh, good kitty, oh, look, a mouse," trying to distract Raja that way. He doesn't ever say the line like "good tiger." He says "good kitty" instead, and I'm sure that, I don't know, is apparently less likely to be misinterpreted. I definitely remember growing up with various classmates in school being like, "Oh, did you know?" And like all these animated sexual innuendo conspiracy theories. Let me know if you've also been exposed to those sorts of conspiracy theories and if you ever spent time going through and trying to find them yourself. I definitely did that with quite a few of the different animated movies. Never found it because it's completely unfounded and it's a conspiracy for a reason. But yeah, that's a little bit of extra conspiracy controversy to end today's podcast. So, in conclusion, I definitely recommend, obviously, the original Aladdin. And Aladdin King of Thieves was actually really awesome. I think it lended a lot more to the vibe of the original film. So, I definitely do think that you should watch that one as well. Center one, Return of Jafar, watch it if you want like a bit of a introduction or preface to the Aladdin series. And if you're a completionist and you have to actually watch the trilogy because it feels weird to go from 1 to 3. But yeah, if you don't have any issue with that, then I don't think you really need to watch the second one. But 100%, obviously watch the original and just throw in King of Thieves for fun. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. We're going to be posting every week, and stay tuned to find out what we're going to be talking about next week. Okay, thanks so much. Bye-bye.